Hi and welcome. It is about the coldest winter in South Africa in 20 years. And honestly, this morning I was lying in bed and I have a little puppy and I just couldn't get him out of bed to take him to daycare. And I was just thinking, I just love to stay in bed and be warm and comfortable. And performance was not really on my mind. Really, I was kind of praying, like, why is it not weekend? And I sort of thought about lockdown and I thought, well, normally it would be great to go to the office, to be between colleagues, to see progress on projects, to see how things are moving forward. But actually, if I wasn't working for myself and if I was going into an office today, I'd feel kind of like, it's like, do I really want to? And then I remembered that I was going to do recordings for Performance Cafe this morning. And I thought, oh, that warms my heart. I know I'm going to be doing something that I love and something I'm enthusiastic about. And I'm going to have great cappuccino, even if it is from a bag. Don't tell anyone. But I was wondering, how do we help employees to get that spark again, to get that motivation? How can we make the current work from home practices easier for them? And I think that there are a couple of things to bring to mind. I think there's things around, let's check about efficiencies and, things like that. How do we just make it work on a functional, operational perspective? But for me, there's also more about how do we make it work for individual people? And how do we actually use the work from home setup to motivate them? So I recently put together some training around how do we manage remote employees and how do we onboard remote employees to get them set up. And one of the interesting things that came out in my research into that was that we have this knack of sticking to an 8-hour workday and that we perceive that as being productive. But actually, different people have different rhythms. So firstly, I'm a morning person. Wake me up at 5 o'clock and tell me to work and I'm there. After about 7 o'clock at night, my IQ takes a big dip. So for me, it's really difficult to do complicated and complex work, say 8 or 9 at night. But I've had many colleagues who actually adore working that time of the evening. They only wake up that time. And so they find it difficult to wake up at 5 o'clock and just jump in and start working and popping off the emails. And so I was thinking the first way that we can accommodate our employees is by asking the question, what time works well for you? Just purely by tracking energy levels, what works well. The other thing that we need to take a look at now is that with lockdown and with COVID, one of the big problems that we have is that people are not at home under normal circumstances. So there might be kids around, there may be, like a partner coming in and out who's part of an emergency workforce or whatever the case may be. And so I think that's the next step to take in mind is, so other than their natural energy, I think the other thing that we can take into account is what is the pattern and the rhythm in their household and can we accommodate them? When we have someone, capturing information for us, does it really matter whether they're doing it 5 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock at night? At the end of the day, if we start as managers managing for outcomes and not for the time people are in their seats or for the tasks they're doing, if we say upload this stack and they upload that stack for us, then surely the job gets done. It's this very antiquated notion of we all have to work and be available at the same time. The next perspective, of course, is how much people want to interact. And this is a difficult one because some people are introverted and they prefer not to spend too much time in the presence of others because they find it distracting to their focus. They might also find that it saps their energy. There are other people, and I put up my hand, who can be quite distracting in the office environment because we want to talk to everyone and chat to everyone and share information with everyone. And so there's this matchup of, at the office it's difficult enough, but now when we are remote, what now? And I think that is a discussion to have with individuals and teams as a whole and say, we have an outcome. Listen to the language, we have an outcome, not we have a task. We have an outcome. Who has what role, who can work at which time, and who needs how much input, and who needs how much connection. in order to assist with that process and in order to get it done. And you might just find that there's harmony, that the extroverts are quite happy to give the introverts a break, and that the introverts understand that every once in a while they do need to be collaborating with the extroverts in order to get work done. But I think that for too long we've tried to do this consistency and fairness thing that's actually incredibly unfair. Because what one person needs is not what another person needs. And anyone who's raised kids, I've never raised, but I do have a lot of friends and family around me who have children, is that this concept of being consistent and fair can sometimes detract from our attempts. Because just because a young innocent wanted lots of attention doesn't mean that a young Mary Jane wanted lots of attention. Mary Jane might have wanted less attention so that she could have more focus. I hope you see what I mean. And so the challenge is about how do we make all these individuals with their preferences work within the organization, instead of trying to say it is only fair that everyone rubber stamps and does exactly the same thing in the same order, in the same way. And I think that if we have meaningful discussions with our teams around what suits you and how do you want to work, then we open up the discussion that this is not being unfair. This is about meeting individual needs. And also, you can remind the team that you guys can test drive things. Try the new way of work for a week or two. Then meet what works, what doesn't work, rejig it, right? Agility is incredibly important right now. I had a friend who was a pilot, and he always used to say the most fascinating thing to him is when people say you're flying from Cape to Cairo, basically from the south to the top of Africa, that people assume you fly in a straight line. And he says you don't. He says you fly from one beacon to the other, to the other, to the other until you get there. So you and your team can work from beacon to beacon. And in the HR methodology, those are called sprints. So you work for a short while, then you review. You should work for a short while, then you review. You manage the progress, you see what works, you see what didn't work, you see where you're falling behind, you see where you've leapt ahead. And you use that information and reflect on it in order to keep going forward. So those are just a couple of ideas on how to manage this whole move into remote work. I hope that you have found it useful, and I hope to hear from you. Please leave a message for me in the comments box, and remember to like and subscribe to this channel.